Thousands flee south away from the fighting. President Biden wants a 3-day pause in Gaza, but Israel says no stop until they have their hostages back.
Are you frustrated with Prime Minister Netanyahu that he has not listened more to some of the things you have asked him to do?
Taking a little longer than I hoped.
Good evening from Jerusalem. Some positive news. It seemed tonight as the White House announced 4-hour humanitarian pauses every day in Gaza, and the Islamic Jihad group indicated that they intended to release 2 hostages. However, the 4-hour pauses appear only to formalize what has already happened for the past few days on the ground, and Israel says it is not a policy shift. And tonight, there is no sign of a halt in the fighting. And away from Gaza, we explore the case of 27-year-old Fouad Abu Sabah, a young Palestinian man with learning difficulties. He threw some stones in the direction of Israeli soldiers in the West Bank and received a bullet in the neck that killed him instantly. It is a death among too many that we stumbled across by chance.
Also tonight, questions over the future of the Home Secretary after she defies Downing Street with an article accusing the police of bias. Suella Braverman's newspaper piece, which claimed police officers play favourites when it comes to protesters, was not cleared by Number 10. The Prime Minister says he has her full confidence, but for how long? The hospital waiting list in England is now 7.8 million long, another record high. Rishi Sunak pledged to clear the backlog and...
Politicians don't care about people who can't vote for them or give them money. And I think kids are often an afterthought of politicians in society.
Now, amid all the intense diplomatic moves to free the 239 hostages being held in Gaza, the calls are growing for Israel to implement a pause in the fighting in exchange. A pause longer than 3 days, according to President Biden. Well, let's get more now from our foreign affairs correspondent, Sikander Kamani, who joins me on the roof here of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. Sikander, what more can you tell us? Is even worse. Sikander, thank you very much. Okay, that's it from us. We'll be back later in the program from here in Jerusalem. But let's go to Jackie in Leeds. Jackie.
Thanks, Matt. The future of the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, is under question after Number 10 said they had not given their agreement to her article accusing the Metropolitan Police of bias. Rishi Sunak is now facing calls to sack her, while Labour accused her of deliberately creating division. In a piece for The Times, Ms Braverman claimed the police were applying a double standard to the way they policed pro-Palestinian protests. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, reports. Thanks very much, Gary. Now, the number of people waiting for hospital treatment in England has hit another record high, with the backlog for treatment now standing at 7.8 million. That backlog has increased every month since January, when the Prime Minister promised to reduce it. Well, our health and social care editor, Victoria McDonald, joins me now. Victoria, what else did the numbers show? Victoria, thanks very much. Now, Donald Trump was conspicuous by his absence as his rival Republican presidential hopefuls staged their third primary debate, discussing everything from Russia's war in Ukraine to abortion rights. In a series of rather hostile exchanges, the would-be candidates proved reluctant to openly criticise Mr Trump himself, who's repeatedly refused to appear alongside his rivals, but continues to dominate the field. Our Washington correspondent, Siobhan Kennedy, reports again. Siobhan Kennedy there. Well, let's go over again to Matt in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Jackie. Now, while attention has been focused on Gaza, the West Bank has seen its deadliest year in decades. At least 178 Palestinians have been killed in the occupied West Bank since the Hamas attacks of October the 7th, more than the whole of last year. That's according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. It has raised concerns about Israel's legal responsibility to protect civilians in the occupied territory and the issue of disproportionate harm. The most recent violence erupted early this morning. Latest figures suggest At least 11 Palestinians were killed and 20 others were injured by Israeli forces during a raid on Jenin city. And those tensions are mirrored across the West Bank, as we witnessed when we were filming near Hebron, shortly after a young Palestinian man had been shot dead. Amid this constant backdrop of violence, when each death is a personal tragedy, we decided to piece together exactly what happened. Well, that's it for me this evening, and indeed for the time being. After 5 weeks of presenting in Israel, tonight is my and my wonderful team's last night here. Thank you for watching. Let's go to Jackie in Leeds.
Thanks, Matt. Now, prison officers are demanding the government immediately introduces so-called parva spray to be used on violent young offenders, warning that further delays will end in tragedy. The chair of the Prison Officers Association has written to the Justice Secretary for the second time in 6 months to say the incapacitant, similar to pepper spray, must be introduced right now to prevent a death in the increasingly dangerous youth prison estate. The Ministry of Justice says it's still studying the evidence, but in the letter seen exclusively by Channel 4 News, the POA warns spiralling violence in young offenders' institutions means time is running out. Mark Fairhurst and Andrea Kuhnberg, thank you very much for talking to us today. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Well, in a statement, a Ministry of Justice spokesperson said the safety of children in our care and our staff is paramount, and we're committed to improving safety across our sites. That's why we are carefully considering all the evidence before making a decision on the further rollout of parva. After the break, up close with the rapper Killer Mike. The musician and activist has been in the UK for a rare series of gigs. We talked to him about his Atlanta childhood and the activism that informs his life. Welcome back. The rap musician and activist Killer Mike has taken to the stage in London for a series of shows, his first in the UK for more than a decade. The Grammy award-winning star, whose real name is Michael Render, rose to fame as part of the group Run the Jewels. But as well as a burgeoning solo career, he's made a name as a political activist too, a powerful advocate during the Black Lives Matter movement and for left-wing Senator Bernie Sanders. Our culture correspondent, Minnie Stevenson, went to meet him. That is all we have time for. It's good evening from everyone here in Leeds and everyone in Jerusalem. We are back at 7 tomorrow night. Until then, that's Channel 4 News. Good evening.
It's starting to pour. DeLonghi Bean to Cup coffee machines sponsor Weather on 4.